Dr. Abugri,
Yes.
can you share with me some of the things you know about vaccination?
So let's say you have an army, and then your army is trained to protect your country, but they don't know who the enemy is. If the enemy slips past the borders, they will let the person in. So what you do is that you prime your soldiers. So you go and capture a weakened enemy, one that you have already beaten to almost to death. And you bring him and show him to your soldiers, and you tell them that this person is the enemy. When you see anyone like him, kill him or arrest him. So then the next time the enemy tries to invade, even in large numbers, your soldiers are ready to fight back. So vaccination is just the introduction of biological agents into an organism to elicit an immune response. I've seen videos where people are saying that they send the animals to be vaccinated and animals came down with the disease.
People vaccinate their pets and it fails. People vaccinate their sheep, goats, cattle and it fails. Why do they fail?
Here are some of the reasons why a vaccine may fail.
My name is Dr. Emmanuel Boachinim, and this is the Vet Podcast, redefining veterinary medicine in Ghana. Today with me, as usual, is my brother and friend, Dr.
Henry Asigri Abugri.
And today we are going to talk about vaccinations. We are zeroing in on vaccinations done in Ghana. So today we are going to give a general overview because we are going to do a series on vaccinations.
Yeah.
We'll talk about vaccinations in small animals, vaccinations in large animals, vaccinations in poultry. By small animals, we are talking about the pets, dogs and cats. Vaccinations in large animals, we are talking about cattle, sheep and goats, and then pigs.
Yeah.
And then when we talk about poultry, I mean our birds in general. And then as part of the package, we will zero in on rabies because it is one of the endemic diseases that is worrying us as part of our efforts to help the 0 by 30 agenda. The Vet Podcast is dedicating an episode on rabies, so anticipate that particular episode. So today we are going to zero in on everything vaccinations. We will talk a little bit about the myths around vaccines. We will take you to an immunology 101 session where we will take you through the science behind vaccinations. I mean, we will delve a little bit deeper into it so that you have a better understanding and perspective of the whole thing. And then we'll talk about how it works and why vaccine fails. And this one will particularly go for most of the pets, small animals. That is where we have a lot of problems. And so when we get to the vaccines, especially the small animal section, we will delve deeper, explaining some of the things and peculiar instances where vaccines have failed and clients are blaming doctors or doctors blaming clients. We will delve deeper into it. So today, probably I was thinking this episode might be a shorter one, but after looking at the whole schedule that we have to talk about with regards to vaccinations, I've come to terms with the fact that this episode might be longer because we want to explain things to you, to your understanding. So bear with us and let us take the whole session through. Dr. Abugri,
Yes.
can you share with me some of the things you know about vaccinations? I mean, we want to understand what vaccines are in the first place and what vaccination is. So what are vaccinations?
So I think I'll put it this way. So vaccines are more or less biological agents that we introduce into the body of organisms to kind of initiate a response from the immune system. So it's more like this. I'll use this kind of story. So let's say you have an army, and then your army is trained to protect your country, but they don't know who the enemy is. If the enemy slips past the borders, they will let the person in. So what you do is that you prime your soldiers. So you go and capture a weakened enemy, one that you have already beaten to almost to death. And you bring him and show him to your soldiers, and you tell them that this person is the enemy. When you see anyone like him, kill him or arrest him. So then the next time the enemy tries to invade, even in large numbers, your soldiers are ready to fight back. So vaccination is just the introduction of biological agents into uh, an organism to elicit an immune response, um, to prepare for, let me say, a day or a time where there will be a real invasion by that kind of pathogen.
You've shared with us what vaccination is, and vaccinations are done with vaccines.
Yes.
Vaccines are, in your words, the enemy, a
Yeah.
weakened form of the enemy.
Enemy.
Now, there are two types of vaccines. Like I mentioned, this is immunology 101. So, we are
Yeah.
learning how our body protects itself against infections. The vaccines, they are basically two different types. We have the weakened or the killed.
Yeah.
Weakened or the killed, or parts of them. Now, it can either be the full pathogen, for instance, let's say we take a whole bacteria, or we just take a part of the bacteria that causes the disease.
Yeah.
I don't want to use medical terms because we want you to appreciate what we are talking about. If we don't use the whole thing, if the vaccine does not contain the whole thing, the part of the pathogen that is taken to produce the vaccine is the part that the body can recognize and respond to. So these are the three types of vaccine: either the full pathogen, or the germ, the full germ, which is weakened, like we've beaten it for it to become less aggressive,
Virulent.
or
Okay.
we've killed it. So the medical term is virulent, less virulent, or we've killed it, like we've killed it, but it has the part that causes the disease,
Yeah.
or we just take just that part to produce the vaccine. I mean, this is the simplest way we can explain what a vaccine really is. Now, they are critical for both animal health and even preventing zoonotic diseases that can spread to humans. So, like we mentioned, we are going to do a full episode on rabies. So, the rabies vaccines that we give animals, particularly dogs and cats, we give it to them because they can give us rabies. And when we get to rabies, we will talk about the rabies virus, the rabies vaccine itself, and we will delve deeper into why we are giving you a full episode. And let me give you a gist. Most of the time, we hear that dog bites is what causes rabies, especially if the dog has
That's
rabies.
rabies.
But let me shock you. On my Instagram last year, I did a video called "It is in the Saliva." The rabies virus is in the saliva, which bathes the teeth of the dog
Yeah.
that it uses to bite you. So if a dog has rabies, it is in the saliva. So if, let's say, I have a wound and that dog has rabies and I play with the dog,
It
and the
makes it.
dog happen, the saliva of the dog happen to touch any wound on my body, automatically, like, the dog has given me rabies, especially if the saliva contains the virus. But if I have vaccinated that dog, I've primed the dog's immune system, like Henry said, giving the dog's system some weakened form of the rabies vaccine is killed.
Killed them.
The killed form of the vaccine, the killed form of the virus that causes the disease. Okay, the dog's body will produce soldiers, will train its soldiers, which are the white blood cells, to now fight the virus and prevent the dog from having or incubating the rabies virus in its body to transmit it to me. So basically, that is how the vaccine works. Okay, that's how the vaccine works. Now, when you give the antigen, which is the germ, either the killed, the weakened, or the part to the dog, it will trigger the body to produce response. More or less like, um, I don't want to use this example, but I think it's one that people of our age will really appreciate with playboys or somebody who knows. So let me go both ways so that I won't be biased. If a lady has been duped before by a guy, by a playboy, they can see the signs of a playboy the very moment the person starts talking. In the same way, if a guy has been duped by a lady, right from the very onset, the guy can see that,
Yeah.
this girl, a musical will be paid. You get it? So it is like the first person who exposed you to that situation is the vaccine.
You have gained immunity.
So now you've gained immunity. Your body, your mind has trained itself to fight anybody that is coming as such, and that is how vaccines really work. And so your body will create antibodies. What the body creates is antibodies that will remember whenever the pathogen surfaces, more or less like a playboy coming to you, and because of your experience from the other playboy, you can tell right away that this person is coming to play me. So that's how vaccine works. That is how the whole vaccine thing works. It's not any magic. That is the science behind it. The cascade is a long process that we can't exhaust. But if you were to come to my immunology class, NY will take you through the whole
Thank you.
process. I mean, it's like that. But we are going to zero in on why vaccine fails. Okay, why vaccines fail? Why after I've spent time vaccinating myself and the vaccine failed? I don't know if you remember during COVID, they said they've given people. Some people took the
Took
vaccines
vaccine.
and still got COVID.
Yeah.
So we are going to look at why it fails, why vaccines fail. People vaccinate their pets and it fails. People vaccinate their sheep, goats, cattle, and it fails. Why do they fail? So, Dr. Bugri, can you share with us why vaccine fails?
This is very important because I think it will answer a lot of questions
That
people
people are
have
asking.
are asked. I've seen videos where people are saying that they send the animals to be vaccinated and animals came down with the disease. So it means that either they were duped by the vets or something, and so we have been vilified. That way, we have been unjustly vilified. And I sometimes don't blame you, the client. I blame we, the vets. If we don't explain what we do to you, it will look like we are doing magic, and so you might have some right to blame us. But here are some of the reasons why a vaccine may fail. Now, for most vaccines, they rely on something we call cold chain. So they come at a certain temperature. And so also sometimes only between 2 degrees to 8 degrees Celsius. And so if they go beyond the upper limit or the lower limit, they lose their efficacy. Meaning that, for example, when you are dealing with the weakened vaccines, the biological agent is not dead, but it's only weakened. So it needs to be put at a temperature where it will not either die or lose its structure. And so if you break that cold chain, so that is the temperature range, 2 to 8 degrees. If you pass that range, the virus either dies or loses its ability to do what it must do. So when you introduce it into the body, there will be no response.
Okay, so now before you even go on, let me chip in this. When I was talking about the vaccines, I think I forgot to mention it. Now, these vaccines, the components of the pathogens, the germs that causes the diseases, they are proteins.
Yes.
Okay, they are proteins, and if you sat through any class on proteins, they will tell you that they have a structure. The more you boil it,
Like egg.
the more the structure changes. Okay, so we are told not to overcook meat because when we overcook it, we destroy the proteins.
So another reason why vaccines fail is when the animal that the vaccine is going to be given to is either sick or is stressed. So remember, the vaccine has to go and elicit an immune response, meaning that it has to go and trigger the immune system to produce the kind of proteins to use to identify the virus or the disease when it comes into the body. And so if the body is already stressed, so stress means that the body has gone to a certain point of, let me say, it's a panic mode or in an emergency mode. The body is already going through a lot,
It's not in a normal state.
and so at that particular instance, the body cannot respond to any form of vaccination because the body is already at its peak. And so if you introduce a vaccine into the body might not be able to recognize it and it cannot respond appropriately. Or if the organism or the animal is sick already, the animal is already down, the animal is already expressing a form of disease, the vaccine is supposed to go and cause the body to respond, to produce antibodies against it. But the body at that moment is already fighting the battle. Let me put that way. It's already focused on trying to survive.
You can't train soldiers
soldiers
whilst you
was I think you cannot train soldiers already on the battlefield.
already on
They
the
are already
battlefield.
fighting an enemy. So if you send a new enemy to them at that time, they'll become confused. They won't even notice that enemy. And so that is one of the reasons why we can give a vaccine to animals. So sometimes go to the vet will tell that the vet wants to take temperature to verify, want to be sure that the animal is healthy before they will give the vaccine. So that you go to the doctor that the temperature of the animal is very high, sit down and rest a bit. They want to be sure that the animal is not sick. Maybe it was due to transportation that the temperature went up. So we do this so we are sure that the animal is in good health, at least to the best of our knowledge. The animal is in good health before we introduce that vaccine into the body. So that is one way that vaccines can fail. Another instance of vaccine failure has to do with individual biological differences. So in pharmacology or in drug preparation or anything, they use a population. So they calculate it based on a number of population that it will work on. But there are always outliers, people or organisms that will not always fit in the
Status
normal
quo.
do not fit inside. So you might be one of those, or your pet might be one of those few individuals that do not fit into that kind of category the vaccine will work for. So even though the animal has been vaccinated, the animal will refuse or not show any sign of immunity. And so remember when the COVID came, some people were vaccinated and they got COVID. So, and people took COVID and then they had issues. And so that's what I mean by individual differences. It's not that the vaccine is damaged or the vaccine is faulty or is bad. It's a bad vaccine. It simply means that the animal does not have the ability to actually respond to that kind of vaccine. It's not part of that bracket that vaccine can cover due to biological differences. Another thing that we see is the fact that we have what we call strains. For example, usually for viruses. So let's say, a typical example, when COVID came, it was COVID-19. Then we later we heard of Omicron,
Yeah,
and
Omicron.
then Delta also. So it kept changing and mutating. And so viruses and they have strains, they have variants, different types that are in the environment. So it can be a particular vaccine that was produced using one particular strain of that virus. So let's say there is a strain in Ghana here called strain Ghana, and then we go import a vaccine which was made in UK, and the UK strain is called strain UK. If you bring it to Ghana here and you vaccinate our animals, it will not work
It's not like
because the viruses they also have different characteristics. And so when you vaccinate your animal with a vaccine where the strain is not the same as the strain in the vaccine, it will fail. So that is why you can vaccinate your animal and then later on the animal also come down the disease. Now another reasons why vaccine may fail is what sometimes people fail to kind of see or analyze. Now, typically, when we vaccinate an animal, it takes about 14 days to gain what we call immunity for the body to fully produce
to even start
antibodies
producing
to
antibodies.
fight the disease. So within that 14 days, if the animal is exposed to the disease, the animal will come down with the disease. So it's not that because you have given the vaccine that day, the animal is already secured. The immunity begins after 14 days. That's why we can say that it's now building up a threshold. So if, let's say, we give the vaccine today, a puppy comes and give the vaccine today, and you take the puppy home, and the puppy goes to play with another dog that has a disease, that puppy will get the disease. And you might think that the vet duped you, but it's a science. The science behind it is that it takes 14 days before we can see that your animal is protected. But
So
even with that, we still need to, there's a way of confirming, which we call antibody test, the titer
titer
test,
test
where we take blood, we check the serum, and able to determine whether the body was able
able
to
to
effectively produce antigens to a particular level where it is able to fight the disease. So we can give the vaccine, but the animal will not develop that antigen. So that's something that you have to note,
antibodies to the antigen.
to the
So the
antigen.
vaccine is the antigen, and then the response is the antibodies. Basically, these are the key factors that you need to know about vaccines. Dr. Bugri has mentioned and delved into the science of why vaccine fails in simple terms for us to appreciate. He used big words, but they are simple. If you didn't get anything, let us know in the comments and we will address it for you. We hear a lot of things about vaccines. People say, oh, and the vaccine is this, the vaccine is that, to make my dog impotent, and a whole list of other things.
Sterilize your dog.
Sterilize and a whole list of other things. Now, what are some of the myths that you've heard? Me, one of the myths I've heard is somebody said they heard that if you vaccinate your dogs, they'll stop barking. They will stop barking. I mean, I've heard a whole list of things. What are some of the myths you've heard, and what are the truths against those stories? Let's talk facts over here.
For the back end, I think it's just a funny joke because I don't know how the vaccine will cause animal not to back again. But well, let's leave it at that. I've heard stories that, I'll call it, if you vaccinate your dog with any vaccine, either the dog will get cancer or some other diseases that will come about that. The problem is that, you see, sometimes we are quick to make certain claims without having any form of data to support it, and it's kind of dangerous because um, there are some things that are more of coincidence, not facts. So, example, your dog is vaccinated, and then anytime your dog gets cancer and dies, then you see that the vaccine caused the cancer. The problem is that you have to do tests, you have to do things to verify. As I said, as for biologicals, yes, in medicine, we know that nothing is impossible
Yeah.
because, yes, individual animals have different responses. Perhaps, maybe just your case, it might have caused some unintended response that might have caused that. But to just outrightly just say that vaccinations will give cancer to your dog, we have been vaccinating animals for years, and we usually look at the pros and the cons. How many animals have gotten cancer out of vaccinations, and how many have not? You look at the numbers that have not gotten any cancer, you realize that the number is an overwhelming huge number. And so some of these things, we just regard them as either misinformation, or even if there is an iota of truth to it, it's an isolated case and should
Yeah.
not become a norm, or should not become something that we go about telling people that vaccines are responsible for causing cancers.
Not
That is one.
not to bloat things out of proportion. It is true sometimes we will react to vaccines, and animals do react to vaccines. I remember I supervised a vaccination where there was a poodle. The poodle really reacted to the vaccine. Like, You could see visible reaction on the skin. Vaccine reactions, okay. Sometimes some of our colleagues and friends, paraprofessionals, tend to dismiss clients on those fronts. And I think sometimes it's one of the reasons why the misinformation keeps spreading, because if the person makes the complaint and we don't acknowledge
Yeah.
it as such, it's a problem. Yeah. So vaccine reactions do occur, okay, but the fact that it occurred in one doesn't mean it is the norm. There are some vaccines, when you take them, you react. I remember when we took the COVID vaccine,
Yeah.
it was during exam week. Hey, like for 2 days straight, it took me a week to actually recover from taking the first dose of the COVID vaccine.
And others took it and nothing
Some
happened.
people took it and nothing
I took
happened.
it and I was walking like,
In fact, yeah, I remember you teased me for weeks, for
so
for the whole week. And so vaccine reactions do occur. We acknowledge that, but the fact that they do occur doesn't mean it occurs in every
individual,
situation.
yeah.
Like Dr. Bugri mentioned, there are outlier cases. Okay, and before vaccines are, yes, we know that there are some unscrupulous companies that will do certain things and bring products out, but it doesn't mean that every vaccine is going to cause adverse
Yeah.
reactions. Yes, it's true, companies do recall
Batches of
batches
the
of vaccines.
vaccines.
It happens. It happens. But it doesn't mean it's every vaccine. See, if not for vaccines, not only in veterinary medicine, I mean in human medicine. You remember the time when we used to take the 6 killer diseases? I mentioned it the last time, and some high school kids said they didn't even know what it was.
Has it been stopped?
Uh,
Or we have eradicated them
Yeah,
in
we've
Ghana?
eradicated the
Really?
measles.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I
Well,
can't say for certain,
have
but
I have PTSD. That mark, I think almost
yeah,
everyone born within the 90s,
yeah,
80s has that.
19 to early 2000s.
You
Sir,
have it.
you take it, and it was killing people. You see, and I sometimes too, I think I get the anti-vaxxers and the people who spread the myths, but it still doesn't. I mean, it doesn't sit well with me for
Like,
somebody to say, yes, people tried vaccines on Africans. Okay, we are towing a legal line.
these things, we cannot say that these wicked or evil people don't exist in this world.
Yeah,
That's not our
wicked people
point.
exist.
We agree that there can be conspiracy theories that are true, and saying that certain vaccines may or may not be good for you, but we cannot just outrightly just say that all vaccines I'll call it, are out there to destroy you or to kill or to eradicate your animals on your farm or anything like that. You should trust your vet. We gain nothing from. I don't work for any vaccine company. I don't get any proceeds from any vaccine company,
Neither
so
do
I
I.
don't have any motivation to come here and tell that go and vaccinate your animal. And so, what you are looking at, as you mentioned, a disease like rabies virus, it's a the once the symptoms and signs starts, it's too
It's
late. Your coffin will just be designed and will come and chop jollof at your wedding. Sorry, at your at your funeral. So it's deadly. So vaccines are the sure ways to
you,
protect you from that. So when we are saying this, it's for your own good, for my good. So please let's look at that. Another myth that I have come across is that um, once you give a vaccine to the animal will fall sick. That's what some people who don't want to vaccinate the animal say that. Well, my animal was healthy when they vaccinated the animal fell sick. Now it's very important, and you have a very genuine concern. As I explained, when if you are not careful, and let's say your pet or your animal is already stressed or is already sick, it's incubating. So diseases don't just come at once. They have a incubation period. So where the disease is still trying to find its its place in your body until it multiplies to a certain level where it can go all out. So within that incubation period, your body will not display outward signs of the disease. So if, let's say, your body is already or the pet is already incubating a disease, and you go and vaccinate the animal, the vaccine will trigger, I'll call it, let me say,
The body is already under
under
stress.
stress. So to
The
cause,
vaccine itself causes stress.
yes,
It's a stressor in and of itself.
yes,
And so, if the animal is incubating a disease which is stressing the system, once the vaccine comes in, is another stressor.
yeah,
It brings the immune system down, and the disease situation precipitates.
yes.
So it doesn't mean that it's the vaccine
Let's
or
say
it's the
it's
vaccination.
uh,
It just compounded the situation. Two troubles, one God.
one God.
And the God, the immune system of that God, the immune system, which is the God of the dog, couldn't show up.
Because you see, this is why we say that you should always go to a professional, a veterinarian, to do this for you, because we understand the scientific dynamics behind what you do. It's not just about, oh, my dog is 6 weeks old, let me go and pick vaccine and jab. You will do certain things without understanding. It's not just, if it's jabbing, then we can all jab, and you can all go and buy vaccines and jab people. But there is a scientific reasoning behind what to do. Why at this age is the animal healthy? If it's not healthy, what do you do? And note, people sometimes wait when the disease starts to manifest and they go and vaccinate. You have compounded your issue. If once the disease starts, we do not vaccinate. Let me say it again. Once a disease starts, we do not vaccinate against that disease. Once you introduce the vaccine, you want to multiply the situation. The animal will go into a hyper mode, which will make the situation worse. So note, if the animal is incubating a disease or the animal is already sick with disease, the vaccine will make the situation worse. So it's not just about, I want to vaccinate my animal. The other thing I want to understand, that people say that, oh, they don't need to vaccinate their dogs because their dogs are indoors, especially with rabies.
Yeah.
So I say my dog is an indoor dog, doesn't go out. I don't have to vaccinate. Maybe it's in the compound and all those things. The issue is that vaccines are more like insurance policies that we give to animal to make sure that the animal has a certain level of protection. So the day the animal is exposed, now later on we'll do a video on rabies, as we said, but rabies is not only gotten from dogs. You can get them from mammals. Rats can come to your house. Bats can give your dog or your cat rabies. Your dog can escape and go somewhere. So you are protecting the animal from things that you might not even think about. And so just because I'll call it you have an indoor dog does not mean that you should not vaccinate your animal against rabies. There's also a legal part where, legally speaking, you are required to vaccinate your dog against a certain vaccine. That is, I think rabies. Rabies is a legal requirement. Like rabies vaccine is a legal requirement. Because if you're living in a country where, like Ghana, where it's an endemic disease, it's not your let me say, it's not your choice to say that if I want, I'll vaccinate against rabies. If right now your dog bites someone and the person goes to report to the police, the first thing they'll ask for is your rabies certificate. Right, up to date. If you don't have it, your legal case becomes dire, because you have violated the laws of the country, and you are actually exposed someone to a deadly disease. And so it's important that you know this. It's a legal requirement to vaccinate against rabies. Other vaccines that are not called, that is your choice. But for rabies, it's very important. Do you have any other myths that you've heard?
This one is not a myth, but it's related to a myth.
Okay.
So, for instance, let me be specific. Cats.
Okay.
Now, and it's in relation to why vaccines fail. Now, vaccines are supposed to be administered based on manufacturers' instructions. Some vaccines are supposed to go to muscle. The COVID vaccine was through our muscles, right? Yeah. Some vaccines are supposed to go through the muscle. Some should go under the skin. Okay. Depending on the type of vaccine. Some you take it through the mouth, especially in poultry vaccines. If it doesn't go where it is supposed to go, is one of, yes, one, it won't automatically won't work.
Work.
But the second thing is, it might cause a problem
Yeah.
for where it went. So, for instance, in cats like this, mostly the prescribed places of vaccinating cats with certain vaccines is either on their hands or on their legs,
Yeah.
because they can cause a problem. They can react to the vaccines. And like I mentioned early on, some people say my dogs or my cat or my pet reacted to a vaccine, especially in cattle.
Yeah.
In cattle,
The Williams reaction.
yeah, the Williams reaction.
Yes.
Williams reaction. So where you vaccinate the cat, the cow or the bull will develop some sore at the place of vaccination. If you don't vaccinate where you are supposed to vaccinate, you cause a problem. Under the skin is under the skin. Don't go to the muscle. And so these are some of the things that you should know about vaccines. Now, Dr. Bugri mentioned vaccine titer, and I think I need to stress on this. The truth of the matter is, vaccine titers help us know if the body has built a response to the vaccine that you give.
Yeah.
But normally, in our part of the world, we barely do it.
Oh yes.
We have the capacity, but
The economics of it.
the economics of the thing, I mean, if you do the math, sometimes it doesn't really sit down well.
Most people not want to be pay
And
for
most
it.
people don't want to. So vaccine titers are there, but because we don't do it, we recommend that we do the vaccinations. And I think because of that, that is one of the main reasons the rabies policy is annually.
Yeah.
To always keep the titer up. Yeah. And with regards to vaccine titers, one of the reasons why I'm bringing this in is because some vaccines will need boosters. So annually, the annual rabies vaccination is a booster. Some vaccines, you do boosters. For instance, okay, I read some research papers, not in Ghana. Let me give the caveat, where they vaccinated with the primer, the first dose, for the DHL distemper hepatitis vaccine. They vaccinated with the first dose, the primer, then they gave the booster 2 weeks later. Then they gave the following 2 weeks booster. They did it, they checked the titer, and the titer was high enough. 6 months later, they checked the titer, and the titers were still high enough. They didn't do the booster. A year later, they checked,
Yeah.
and the titers were still high,
Yeah.
but not, I mean, it had reduced, but it was still high.
Yes, I've seen
And so they
similar thing to
skipped
that.
and did the next vaccination 18 months after the third dose. Instead of the 12 months, instead of the 12 months after the first dose, they did 18 months in some instances. So depending on the titers, but like I mentioned, we don't do the titers here.
Yes.
So we have the protocols that we have is okay, fine, let's do it annually. Even though some of the vaccines will bear the manufacturer may write
I
it's
think
for 3
usually
years.
3 years. Yes, you see there.
You do it annually, considering the endemicity of the disease.
In the country.
What I mean, forgive me for using the word endemicity, considering the fact that the endemicity is simply how the disease is prevalent in the country. Okay, how the disease is prevalent in the country.
This is living with us.
Is living with us. So if you consider that, it means you do it annually. So that's what.
Because even with that, I've also seen some clinical works where, actually with rabies, they tested the animal the first year, titer was still high. Second year, third year, even after the 6th year, the animal also showing high levels of the titer. So there's
the outliers.
They just decided not to vaccinate again. But the issue is that also individuals are different. Even as animals age, the titer is different. So a geriatric patient, what I mean is that an older patient will have less immune response than a younger patient.
Yeah.
And so sometimes the older patient, we will vaccinate them, they might not respond appropriately, or they might respond slowly. So all these dynamics. So when we are doing this, we are not doing magic. We put thoughts into what we do. When you go to the vets, he might just like he's standing there, but he's calculating and doing some Sherlock Holmes things in his head. You don't just go there and then, yeah, because you don't see us with papers writing and doing calculating pi r square, you think we take a lot of things into consideration before we do what we do. So this is just let me say a small snapshot into what we actually do before we actually vaccinate your pets or your farm animals.
So it's amazing how vaccines prep our animals. Now, let's come home to Ghana. Okay, let's come home to Ghana. Yeah, let's come home to Ghana. How is Ghana making vaccinations happen? Now, I remember when COVID hit us and everybody was, you realize that every country was going for the same product.
From is it
AstraZeneca had,
Zeneca and then Pfizer, right?
yeah, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, J&J,
Thompson and Thompson, what they call it.
yeah,
Johnson and
Johnson and
Johnson.
Johnson. So Ghana, we were fortunate to have vaccines from AstraZeneca, which a few years ago, I think they mentioned that there was something wrong.
They recall some.
They record some of their doses. However, we got some. After that, I think the Ghana National Vaccine Institute was set up. Yeah. But for us in the veterinary space, I am proud to say that at least we've been producing vaccines
We were like centuries ahead.
Yeah, we've been producing not COVID vaccines. I mean, in the veterinary space, we've been producing Newcastle
Yes.
virus I2, the I2 Newcastle vaccine for poultry, and we've been doing it for years. I wanted to reach out to Dr. Odum to find out exactly when the veterinary services started producing the vaccine, and kudos to the Accra Vet Lab and the Point
The
Tamale
Bontamel lab,
Lab
yes, they are
for
doing very
doing a
well.
very great job. I mean, it's. I mean, I'm proud to say that.
No, but you see, when we mention Ghana, we don't take any good thing come out of
Oh,
Ghana.
but seriously, there are some good things in
Can
Ghana.
it come out of Nazareth? So we don't, but we are proud to say that the veterinary sector of Ghana has been leading and producing vaccines in Ghana for years.
Yes.
When our human counterparts have been importing vaccines, yeah, we import some, but we're taking the lead. You mentioned I2 vaccine, which is for poultry, Newcastle. We
Yeah,
produce also anthrax
spore vaccine.
spore vaccine.
Yeah.
Last I heard of an anthrax outbreak
Outbreak in the
in the Upper East region. We produce that. Pong Tamale Lab does that. Sintamale.
Yeah.
We produce black leg vaccine, Clostridium vaccine. We also produce
Clostridium shivoi.
yes.
Yes, it causes
Then,
black leg.
we have
Tetanosis,
what call it?
brother.
As another vaccine, something
Hemorrhagic septicemia vaccine.
Yes.
So it deals with any the bacterial infections in cattle.
Yes.
Yeah. So we produce how many? 4.
Yes, four vaccines.
4 vaccines. Wow.
Yes, so when they established the Ghana
National Vaccine Institute,
it's like they were late to the game. They came to meet some people already producing vaccines ahead of them, and so we want to highlight that our labs, Accra lab, and then the Pong Tamale lab, they have been years ahead of Ghana. In fact, we were living in 2050.
Yeah.
Whilst people were still crawling. So we want to point that out to you guys.
So it's a good job they are doing. So there's vaccine being produced in Ghana in the veterinary space. I just want you to know that. Yeah. Let's talk about vaccine policy in Ghana. Okay. I know for poultry there's a solid vaccination schedule and there's a policy around it. As for sheep and goats, I mean large animals, I've not really seen a specific vaccination policy. Neither have I seen some for small animals. But at least small animals, the predominant one is rabies,
Yes.
which we have a national rabies strategy. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it when we deal with it. And then, so poultry, small animal, and then large animal. Let's talk
The
about
fishes too, they also
and
have
then the
their vaccinations.
fisheries.
Yes.
Yes, let's talk about vaccine policy.
Yes.
Do you think we yes, it's true that it may not be in the public domain, but do you think we have done a good like job educating people about vaccine policy? Because sometimes when you hear people talk about vaccines, vaccinations, when you are telling people about vaccinations, it looks as if they know nothing about it.
Yeah.
Like they don't see the relevance of it.
Yeah.
Yes, it's true that we are not educating enough. I mean, let's be sincere with ourselves. That is why we are doing this podcast anyway. But it seems we need to up our game with regards to some of these things. We need to have documents that when we mention some of these things, people can easily access
Yeah.
on the internet, especially the people who are inquisitive enough to go and read. Because when and it shouldn't be long. No,
It should
not
be
like
too technical.
no.
Or
I mean, I think we can develop these small poster kind of documents. One
more for like for the general public, something that
some
they can
one page
consume.
documents that people can easily digest, because sometimes even as when we are reading the large documents, Charlie, the multiple page documents, it's a little bit.
It's a way of making you sleep.
Yeah, you want to sleep when you see some of these documents. So I think we need to up our game
Policy.
on that aspect. But anyway, I mean, policies are big things.
Yeah.
It doesn't we don't develop it all at a go. But anyway, we are doing a good job, and I think we can do more and do it better.
I think that we have to also look at it from the angle that policies are driven by data research, and it's an area that
We really don't do
we
much
are
about.
lacking a bit. I see we have a lot of veterinarians in research. We can mention what call it champions in what call it in research, that who have done great work in research. Some of our lecturers in the University of Ghana, K University, they are doing a lot of wonderful work. But the issue is that research needs funding. And so because of there's lack of funding into some of these things, we are not able to get, because for policy, you have to know the kind of strain that is in your environment. So example, you mentioned that in poultry, we have vaccine protocol for poultry, but we don't have some of them for small animals and large animals. I remember FMD, for example.
Yeah,
There's a vaccine, but we don't know
the
the
strains.
strain in the country. If you go and import, even among the strains, there are so many.
Yeah,
It's SAT1, it's SAT2, like so many. So if you SAT1, if you go and import one that is not in your country, or is it even whether is it a mixed strain in the country, which part of the country has a specific strain? So to draw a policy, you will need to know which part, this region, this area, which strains are prevalent. Do you need a whether a monovalent vaccine or polyvalent vaccine? So
hey,
it's
please relax.
monovalent means that the vaccine has only one strain in it. So maybe just one virus strain in it. Then poly means that there are many. So it can be 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's just what I meant. So this will help to make policy. So we cannot see that the vets are not doing their work. They are working hard. But as I said, in this country, remember our first episode, we mentioned it, that in our society, animal health, animal welfare is not our priority. It only becomes important if it affects somebody who is in power. So let's say if a minister's farm is destroyed by a disease, then he go to parliament and go and complain about the fact that diseases are killing animals in Ghana. But if the poor man's animal dies in the farm, who cares if monkey runs diarrhea in the forest? So, so we have to ask people. So this is why we are here. So if we really want this country to be on its toes. These are working. Then, if this is funding is given and all those things, then we can find out and we can make policies that will benefit farmers, pet owners, and all of us in the country. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's been a wonderful ride through vaccines and vaccinations in Ghana. Like we mentioned, we want to keep this episode short so that we can do a full episode on each of the various vaccinations in the different species, the large animal, the small animal, poultry, and then we zero in on rabies and rabies vaccinations in Ghana. It's been a wonderful time with you on this podcast. This is Dr. Emmanuel Boachenim, and with me is Dr.
Henry Asigiri Abugri.
And we did this episode on vaccinations in Ghana. We will come your way the next time, but before we go, I just want to remind you that you can leave us your comments, your likes, your share with a friend, whatever it is. And down in the description, there's a Google form that you can leave your opinion and your feedback on this podcast and what we are doing. We will check it and we will appreciate you for sending us your feedback. You can add your name. If you want to stay anonymous too, you can stay anonymous. Thank you for watching this episode and see you in the next one.